And I also would like a motion to amend the agenda before we begin to address a retail lease agreement between the town of Bergen and the Monroe County Water Authority. Thank you, Shelley.
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. All those in favor of amending the agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's carried. So that is formally on the agenda now. First item we have is to approve the minutes of May 20th. You've all received a copy of the minutes. Would I have a motion to approve the minutes as stated by Shelley? Can I have a second? Gary, would you second that, please? All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. All right. First is the Job Development Director, Teresa Von Son, for a salary schedule amendment. Is Teresa on?
I am. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Teresa.
I have submitted for your approval an amendment to the 2020 management salary schedule to include a performance-based rate increase for the Workforce Development Board manager. They follow his anniversary date of April 1st for salary adjustments. This is covered by the GLOW Workforce Development Board and WIOA funding.
Can I have a motion for that? Shelley, thank you. And a second from Gary. Comments or questions for Teresa, please? Shelley, go ahead.
Sure. Teresa, thank you for bringing this forward. Just a question. In light of where we are with our funding questions and concerns from the state, is this secured funding? And is this the right time during a time that is so economically difficult?
I absolutely understand your concerns. This is secured funding through WIOA, the Workforce Investment Opportunities Act, and this is the normal time and practice for this increase.
Thank you.
Any questions from anyone else?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Gary.
Teresa, this is strictly salary. Does that include fringe benefits? Is that correct?
It would be a percentage basis for fringe, yes.
Thank you.
So you say that it's funded, WIOA funding. Have you had any communications that any of that WIOA funding is in jeopardy in this budget year?
At this point, no. Our regular distributions had been delayed, but we did receive our distribution last week, and it looks promising moving forward.
Is there any, what would you do, Teresa, if you didn't get the funding that you think? Where would the money come from?
We would have to consider, if we were not getting the WIOA funding, we would have to consider furloughing employees.
All right, so that's where you are. If you don't get the funding, there would be more affected than just this salary schedule.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's correct, Madam Chairman. Again, remember, this is funding that the county has never put a dime into this operation, and certainly not into the WE operation, which is part of the 4-county WIB process. So this is all outside funding. So again, it would be an impact strictly within the organization, but again, to the extent that none of the counties have ever had to backstop any of this funding in the 26 years I've been here.
But we're in a time when things that have never happened before are happening. So
Understood.
The question's a valid one.
Oh, absolutely. No, I just want to make sure everybody understands that this is one of those parts of our government that we don't have a local quote unquote county share.
I agree, but I think the WIO board or the Workforce Development Board, I just hope that they're keeping in mind what all aspects of government are doing right now and just having that mindset. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's carried. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next item is the planning director, a contract agreement. Felipe, go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Sorry for the lengthy resolution, but I wanted to put it in context. You know, Genesee County has been doing planning for 32 years now, really. And then our comprehensive plan that we as a, the steering committee and the planning department have been directly involved with since 2000. So it's been 20 years of planning. And as you remember, last year, the county was awarded $40,000 to update the comprehensive plan, and along with that, create a countywide recreation plan. So the funding for this plan is it's total of 100,000 total project funding. 45 of that 1,000 is a cash match that the county had set aside to create that recreation plan a few years ago under the capital projects program. And then $15,000 will be an in-kind contribution, basically our time and efforts through this more than year and a half process. We anticipate this to go through 2021. And like I mentioned, the $40,000 rounds it up to 100. And the award committee, basically made up of the steering committee's executive committee plus a couple other advisory members, met. We reviewed 4 proposals. We interviewed 2 vendors for the project, and we were recommending Prospect Hill out of Buffalo be selected as the consultant to move forward with this really important and exciting project for the county.
Thank you, Felipe. Before we begin discussion, can I have a motion and a second, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Andy, and a second by Shelley. Thank you. Comments or questions for Felipe?
So I served on the review committee for the RFPs, and we did have 4 that were submitted and very easily whittled those down to 2. We had conversations and interviews with the 2 finalists, and I would tell you that I am extremely excited to have Prospect Hill come on board and take us into our 2050 look. They have a very youthful look at our county and our natural resources that we have here, and also our opportunities. And it's someone that's never worked in our county before, yet at the same time, they do have work in communities around us. I cannot wait for them to meet with our leadership partners of our towns, our villages, and our city, because they're just going to be such an incredible part of planning us forward into 2050. And I'm just absolutely thrilled to be able to vote this through at Ways and Means today. So it's going to be a tremendous task, but the plan is really going to make a difference to Genesee County.
Thank you, Shelley. Any other comments from the committee?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Gary.
Felipe, have we already received the $40,000?
No, we have not. But we reached out several times, because of uncertainty with other state funding. We reached out to Empire State Development a few times, and we've been reassured that projects that have already started, they're not going to claw back any of that funding. That we're safe to go forward. And actually, going back to the date of award back in November, we can start claiming that in-kind contribution since then. So as far as I know, and we've been reassured that the $40,000 is still there for us, but we have yet to sign and get a contract from the state on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Any other committee legislators have questions? Felipe, just, give me the short version for people that are citizens. What is a comprehensive plan?
Well, the comprehensive plan for counties is a lot different than a comprehensive plan that you may have for a town. Comprehensive plans for a town set basically the land use policy and a lot of other policies for a town moving forward, and serves as a basis for zoning and subdivision regulations, all those things. For a county is a lot different because we don't have direct land use authority. We don't get to have zoning and set that kind of policy. But for our county has meant a lot of the efforts that we've done, interagency cooperation and departmental cooperation, the way that information flows between the legislature and those departments, that's really the strength. And then also getting that vision from our citizens, putting that as part of policy for the legislature moving forward, getting those updates on a regular basis. So basically the comprehensive plan has served as basically the North Star for the legislature in terms of getting the pulse of the community and emerging issues, things like that. So we get to hear a lot of the things that are happening in our county through the steering committee and through the focus groups, and then that gets put on the radar of the legislature. And that's really how it has been a real benefit of this whole process. In addition to that, it helps to set the policy for our budget officer for Jay and Matt and his office, how moving forward and what gets funded, what doesn't get funded, and what gets priority. So that's really how the county comprehensive plan has helped us all these years. I really think that it's kind of a way for the legislature and the other policy folks to basically get a pulse of what's going on in the county and have a true basically from the grass tops, because these are all the folks that participate in the focus groups are leaders in their area. Basically getting all that knowledge up into the legislature is really how it helps. The way that we're approaching this comprehensive plan update really is about modernizing the process. So again, this was started back in 1988 as a process, but really around 2000 is really when this started going, and a lot has changed. This technology we're using right now is a clear evidence of something that wasn't around back then. The way how you communicate with the younger generations, how we using technology and those things, the way you report it online, the content you put together, that conversation, the way we go forward with that conversation is really what needs to be updated, and that's one of the things we want to do with this update, as well as that recreation plan. That's something that's becoming more and more important in economic development, is to have those quality of life amenities that the younger generations expect, and the way that we can attract companies to Genesee counties to have a strong recreational component to our quality of life. And so that's something else that we wanted to look at for a long time, and what's being funded through this process as well.
All right, thank you. That was a very in-depth explanation, and so I'm glad that people might get a sense of understanding what we say when we say to update the plan. I will say that I have had numerous conversations with citizens in Batavia that are very interested in seeing something done with the Tonawanda Creek in the city of Batavia. So I don't know if Gary and John have had the same kind of feedback, but as part of that recreation plan, maybe we'd be looking at all our assets and how we could use them to benefit our citizens more. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right, if there's no more comments or questions, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Felipe.
Thank you.
All right, next we have our referrals for human services. So Andy, whenever you're ready, go ahead and present those.
Sure. Our first one is a salary schedule amendment. If you'll remember, this was tabled at our committee meeting a couple of weeks ago. At the request of staff, we brought it back, and after further discussion and understanding, we found that it was an important position to be filled.
All right, thank you. I have a second. Thank you, Shelley. Comments or questions regarding this? I think we had a pretty in-depth discussion on Monday with this. If there's any other questions from the legislators, please join in. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Thank
Uh,
you.
we- The second one is a grant acceptance from the Health Department Public Health Emergency Preparedness Program.
All right, and a second for that. Thank you, Gary. Comments or questions regarding this? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried as well. Next.
Last one is a budget amendment for our mental health services for computer equipment that'll allow them to continue their remote access for employees.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. Comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried as well. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is the retail lease agreement, which we brought onto the agenda a few minutes ago from Tim Hens. Will present that. Are you there, Tim? Do you know if he's on, Pam?
I'm looking right now.
Can you hear me okay?
Now I hear you. Yep. Hi, Tim.
I'm sorry. It was saying I was muted, but it wasn't showing I was muted. So
Oh, believe me, I
Um,
I get it. Go ahead.
this is Ernie Haywood brought this to my attention from the town of Bergen. They are developing Water Benefit District number 1, which is basically the remainder of the town of Bergen that does not have water currently. In order for them to operate and maintain their district, they need to have a retail lease agreement with Monroe County Water Authority, which is similar to what they have in the village and the remainder of the town and the other districts. So the Water Authority proposed a new lease agreement that includes Water Benefit Improvement Area number 1, and typical of past operation and maintenance agreements with the Water Authority, they are required under Public Authorities Law to get the concurrence of the Genesee County Legislature every time they enter into an agreement with a town. So this is basically just us saying, yes, you can go ahead and enter into an agreement with our town. Again, this has been done in all of the retail areas in Genesee County. Pembroke, Darien, Stafford, Pavilion, Bergen, and Byron all have retail lease agreements. I went through the agreement. It's pretty much exactly the same in terms of its form and content. I also had Kevin Earl go through it, and he agreed as well. So I would recommend that we adopt this so Bergen can move forward on their lease, getting their final paperwork in place to get their district going. And again, these folks in this water benefit area will contribute to full surcharge as per the amended restated agreement that we did in 2018.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Did you make the motion, Andy?
Yeah, second, I think it was Gary, right?
All right, okay, thank you, Gary. Gary and Andy, any comments or questions regarding this? Go ahead, Shelley.
I just want to be assured, Kevin Earl and Tim Hens, that this agreement is in keeping with our strategic plan of water, paying for water. So the surcharge that is charged and is available from the water benefit area number 1 in Bergen matches the same responsibility and requirement of the rest of our water customers that rely on the Monroe County Water Authority pipeline that the county has provided.
Yes, absolutely. The water supply into the town of Bergen in all new areas is subject to the full surcharge. So they are going to be paying for water just the same as the customers in Leroy and any other part of the county are paying. Again, this resolution really doesn't have anything to do with the surcharge. It just has to do with us concurring on them having Monroe County operate their system. But to answer your question, it is covered through our amended and restated agreement that we have with the town of Bergen that they will pay the full surcharge.
Thank you. And then a separate question, do we have available water to supply this district?
Yes, this is one of the districts that I've had earmarked in our plan for quite a while. I've known about this district for probably the last year and a half or 2 years. So I've got the quantity they need set aside. I know we've been getting, we got close over Memorial Day weekend in terms of production. We had a kind of a spike at the city plant, but that was really in regards to some uncommunicated flushing that was going on in the system, both on the Monroe County side and our side. And we worked out that kink, and I think we're in a good shape for a little while.
Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, this is Kevin Earl. I just wanted to add, yes, I looked at the agreement and I agree with Tim's assessment regarding the questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions or comments from the legislature? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
County managers report.
Yeah, very quickly, we are continuing to track what's going on with regard to the state budget and whether or not the budget director and the governor are going to be forthcoming with their first shot at state budget balancing and the $13 billion deficit that they're looking at and or projecting. We are not anticipating anything within the next day or so, but that, just like with his executive orders, that could change instantaneously. By the same token, we heard from the regional office of the governor's staff explaining to us what it is they've got on their horizons. And I'm going to send a copy of this out to you because we got a verbatim transcript from NISAC. They recorded the call. Talks about the shortfall, what it is that they're looking at already in terms of certain payments, temporarily, shall we say, freezing certain funds like AIM payments, CHIPS, EFC, so that they have enough resources, as far as their disbursements are concerned. Also that with regard to, they are also very much still waiting with regard to what the FedStim 4 may or may not include for both state governments and then the rest of us, which NISAC is telling us is the reason why we have not yet seen the April hit that they are authorized to take. Now we're into the second hit phase, potentially. And again, the governor and the Division of Budget have been indicating in their conversations informally, they are waiting on what happens there before they start making what obviously is empowered and unilateral potential cuts to all our various state aid payments. As you talked about with Teresa, with regard to the funding that comes in within certain departments, we're tracking right now with regard to the DSS payments, settlement payments that come from the state vis-a-vis our weekly share payments, which obviously are one of the biggest mandates that we are looking at. Again, I remind you that back from FedStim 1, we are supposed to see about a $460,000 benefit in reduction in those weekly shares, in this current county fiscal year. But again, they still have not been delivered to us. And so in that regard, that is something that we continue to ask our NISAC representatives, as well as in our case, Representative Tom Reed, to make inquiries to the governor and also to our two states, federal senators, as they negotiate for what happens, what are they telling us that they and the governor will finally consent to with regard to releasing those kind of funds that have already been sent to the state of New York, somewhat to the tune of about $5 billion in total in the first 2 quarters of this calendar year. So it's a lot of moving parts. Again, we're trying to keep as many of the information resources as there are available, out there. On a totally different note, today the governor, and again, put out a new, shall we say, a semi-executive order on outdoor restaurant dining, and then a 13-page guidance that came with, which we've circulated to everybody and their brother so they can start making that plan as of tomorrow. And so these are the kind of things that are going on literally on, on a daily basis, all of it emanating from the second floor in Albany.
So you can have outdoor dining tomorrow, but there's 13 pages of instructions?
Yes, ma'am. And in fact, we are telling people that they should start memorizing those things. And as I indicated, I have this very nice plaza out here outside the old courthouse. I think I'm going to set up some table and chairs and offer water and soda crackers and start charging and just put the money back into the general fund.
I don't know what to
You
say.
know what John Delio says.
I know,
You
but,
just
you know,
can't make this stuff up.
13 pages.
And then the announcement was literally only about an hour and a half or 2 hours ago. So this is what's going on. The state has all these plans. And my sense is that as he has, you know, structuring what his information releases are, then right away comes the guidances, which in some cases provide clarity. In other cases, create more questions than answers. But again, we're circulating that to all of our business associates, the chamber, GCDC, the BID, the BDC, to our GAM associates, because obviously we know in many of our local communities, they have, you know, restaurants that may or may not have this option. But again, it's part of the preliminary, what's now phase 2, before we get to phase 3, which is where technically the restaurants and dining establishments will be part of the opening of phase 3, which again, we hope is within about a 2.5 week period.
A question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Gary.
Jay, do these businesses have to put together a written plan before they can open up?
Gary, what they have to do is the same, and I haven't read the guidance specifically. I glanced through it just very carefully, not real carefully, but just typically of what, just to make sure there was nothing that jumped out. They're going to have to go to the state site, attest that they put the plan together, have the plan in place. There are things like distancing the tables, employees and servers having to wear masks, diners having to wear masks or not when they're either standing or sitting, depending on the way that the outdoor dining has been set up. But again, those guidances are what we're telling people, you know, as far as read the details, because it's not something we get locally to do an interpretation of.
Sounds like the same old stuff.
Well, you know what, it's the fact that it's 13 pages and the one for salons was 12 pages and the ones for outdoor race tracks and things were 12 pages. There's a certain degree of boilerplate there, but then they start getting into the minutia, Gary. And that's why we circulate what we get instantly to all the business people and their advocates and have them start trying to read through some of the details.
Thank you.
Okay, who's charged with enforcing this again?
Well, Andrew, that's a good question. Technically, the county health department might be part of that because again, they give out permits and licenses for restaurant activity.
And they don't have anything else to do right now, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. We're not doing any contact tracing or monitoring, 190 positive cases from day one. Realistically, one of the things we've told people to look at very carefully in this guidance is whether or not the existing permit is within the 4 walls of the existing restaurant. Therefore, if they open up a sidewalk part, does that change and then have the health department have to come and do a secondary supplemental inspection? We don't know that yet. We also obviously sent this right out to Paul and company so that they can, dive into this and get the details. The other thing is the other enforcement entity, if there's any kind of a liquor license, again, there's no clarity as to whether or not a liquor license will allow them to move out onto the sidewalk. Again, that's the state liquor authority. So back to enforcement. If that's unclear, my sense is a lot of people are going to be very hesitant to consider it like their normal dining experience until and such time more clearance and guidance is provided by the state.
And
then
what about businesses that don't need a permit or don't operate under the health department and or authority of the liquor authority?
My sense is, and I can't tell you this for exactly, Andrew, that's what this state guidance is with regard to the New York Forward template, as far as putting their plan together, and then, attesting that they've done that. And then if that's all that is required, then they would be seemingly compliant with what the state is saying you can do as far as an outdoor dining experience.
But again, in terms of enforcement, there really is no undoing that.
Well, they really want it to fall to the local level unless it's a liquor law violation. In that case, the Liquor Commission, I'm not sure what it's called, the Liquor Control Board, whatever, they would be definitely involved. Unfortunately, between local law enforcement, the health department, and in some cases even zoning, the state keeps giving out what I would call a somewhat indistinct message as far as that.
Could you forward me that 13-page document?
I certainly can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we should all get that.
Yep.
As well.
Yeah, like I said, it just came out, excuse me, as we were on a conference call with the state executive's office, John Majuri down in Albany, and people were literally sending it back and forth as it was literally showing up on our email system. But yeah, we've got that and we'll share it with all of you just in case you want to get into the business yourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else, Jay?
Not at the moment.
Does anyone
Jay?
have any questions for Jay?
Yes,
Yes,
Mr. John.
Yes, Madam Chairman. Yeah, Jay, I remember back the federal stimulus #1, weren't we supposed to get some money? And it was supposed to trickle down from the state. Did the
Yes,
check
sir.
come in yet?
The money is actually in Albany. Like I said before, somewhere between $2 and $5 billion. A portion of that is our enhanced FMAP money of about a 6.25% of what the state got in normally 50%. So it went to 56.2%. That money is connected to our weekly shares. And for the fiscal year that we are presently in, it represents the benefit, hopefully, when it's released by the state, which there is no reason why it shouldn't be, except that they haven't done what they call their reconciliation. It represents about $460,000 that would be adjusting our 177,000 weekly share down for the duration of the fiscal year, and that money's available on a weekly basis. That's the only thing that really, John, came out of that first federal stimulus, because $150 billion nationally for local governments was all predicated on CDBG entitlement status and communities over 50,000, which means about 5 or 6 counties in New York State, and obviously the major large cities like Monroe, like Erie, Rochester, Syracuse, those kind of entities. That's the one thing that Senator Schumer made sure of, just as he did back in the ERA funding, was that, the Medicaid FMAP local shares would be something that even small counties like ours would get some benefit out of that Fed Stim 1. But
Thanks.
we still have not seen the reconciliation nor the commitment that they're going to start adjusting our weekly shares. But that money is there and it is supposed to be ours.
The check's in the mail, is that as they say?
Yeah, no, I think it's more like an ACH adjustment that we'll get that Dave Rumsey and Carla Mindler will get a note from the Division of Department of Health and the Medicaid people saying, by the way, your weekly shares will now be for this duration adjustment. That's how they've typically done it before.
Thanks, Jay.
So don't be going to the bank and looking for it, John.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions for the county manager? Okay, thank you, Jay.
My pleasure as always.
Appreciate it. Okay, Pam, you have your department review. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, I just put it up on the screen and y'all had an opportunity to review it, I'm sure. There was just a couple of points that I wanted to make that I did not mention in the department review, the written review. One is that we were audited by the state comptroller's office, the ethics board was, and that occurred last May. We provided answers and information to the questions that they had during the time that they were here auditing us. They have indicated earlier this year that they would be providing an individual response to us as well as a collective. They were auditing a total of 20 municipalities throughout the state, and we haven't received any of that yet. So we are still waiting. We are still waiting for that information from the comptroller's office. The other thing that I wanted to mention that I didn't include is the beginning of this year, end of last year, I worked a little bit with Shelley and also with department heads and the county manager's office to establish a standard for the memorandum of support, so that when items come to the committee, there's an opportunity to see who the information has gone to, who it's been vetted to. And it also provided some guidance for department chairs, or pardon me, department directors and clerical staff when they were preparing information to send to the county manager and to committee. And then lastly, there have been some sample resolutions that have been provided to department heads and also to clerical staff. Those are on our website, and inclusive of the more common resolutions. So when there is a newer clerical staff or a newer department head that's not familiar, it serves as a helpful guidance for them. So if there's anything else that you wanted to ask about or have clarification on in terms of the report, certainly I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I will just comment on what you're just talking about, you know, that new memorandum of understanding procedure or memorandum procedure. I think it has been helpful because we really haven't had any issues lately where we've had to send something back because the appropriate person hadn't seen it, or so just having those people that need to see something sign off on it, I think has been a really good process improvement as far as the legislature goes. I think you've provided a very comprehensive report. As always, we're very pleased with how well you worked at office and how helpful you are to all of us. And I just want to comment that you know, you do an excellent job for us, Pam, and I want to thank you for that. So I'm going to ask if any other legislators have any other comments or questions for Pam regarding her administrative office report.
So I would just echo everything that Mary Ann said. The streamlining that we have provided for the information coming through to the legislature office before it comes to us is invaluable, and it saves a lot of time and question on the legislators' parts. So your calm in that office and providing support to 9 individuals is absolutely amazing to myself, and I will let the others comment about that. But we are extremely, extremely pleased to have you sitting in that seat and minding our fort for us, Pam. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Shelley. Any other comments for Pam or questions? Andy, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
Just a comment again. You guys seem to say it well, but I wanted to make sure I brought it up that she just does an awesome job, and I don't think I could live without her. So she goes, I go, just so you all know.
Pam, you're not going anywhere.
Well, you don't want to lose me, Mary Ann?
That's right. Don't want to go through that again.
Andrew, having said that, based on the prior comment about cleaning up or using the Tonawanda Creek more, maybe you can go down and get the green tint out of it, and then Pam will have one less thing to do.
Perfect. I'll take care of anything she needs.
Oh, she's in charge of that too? I don't think so. Any other questions regarding Pam's office, or anything you want to ask her or provide as input? I'm sure, you know, she's always welcome to hear from us. So go ahead and if something comes up, you know, don't be afraid to talk to her about it.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say it was a good job on the report, and a great job by Pam over the last 2.5 years I've been here. I've always found her to be a great resource, especially to a newer legislator. And I've encouraged, you know, Chad, if he has any questions about protocols or that type of thing, is to see Pam, and she can certainly guide you in those areas.
Well said.
Yep. Madam Chairman?
Yes, John?
I also would like to make the comment. I agree with all my colleagues on Pam. She's been great, continuing to be great. And she definitely has my back, because I know a couple of times she's definitely threw me a text real quick when things were coming up. And that's why I come in a little bit later, but I'm there.
Well, that's good, John. We need you here. All right.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just one more quick comment. Just as a new legislator, just exactly what Gary said. She's been an incredible resource, and would certainly encourage Chad to utilize her. She's just been extremely helpful and calm and exceptional. So thanks. Just thought we'd pile on Pam. So thank you very much.
Well, was that tough to take, Pam?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. And I am always interested in feedback, questions, concerns.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pam. Okay. You want to announce the next meeting date?
Yep, next meeting of the Ways and Means Committee is June 17th.
All right, thank you. And we're gonna move on to the chair report. We have a reappointment to the Genesee County Economic Development Center for Mr. Craig Yunker. He's already serving the board and is seeking another term. So we're happy that he's willing to continue to serve the county in this capacity. So can I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Andrew, and a second. Thank you, Gary. Comments or questions regarding this reappointment?
I'll just speak for a second, just in regard to, I'm the liaison to the EDC, and I think it's real good for us that Craig is willing to stay on. We have some good continuity there. We have definitely good experience and a calm voice in the room that is nice to have. So again, this was something that I was happy was going to happen, and I'm looking forward to serving with Craig for a continued amount of time.
Thank you, Andrew. We appreciate that. We appreciate your service on that board as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Marianne, I would also like to echo the fact that Craig's presence on that board really brings a strong agricultural experience, knowledge, and wisdom with it, as that is one of the pillars of our economy here in Genesee County. It is extremely important that we have a strong advocate for agriculture and the economy that supports here in the county. Craig brings that, and we are very fortunate to have him volunteer for this board. Thank you.
Appreciate those comments as well. Any other legislator want to comment on this resolution?
Christian? Sorry.
All right. Okay.
No comment.
Yeah, we know. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. And once again, we thank Mr. Yunker for his service to the community. The next item is going to be a resolution to fill the vacancy for our legislative district 1. But before I ask for those motions, I'd like to have Pam read the letters that came to the legislature from the two committees that were charged with filling this seat. So go ahead, Pam.
This is dated April 28th, and it states, on May 17th, 2020, the Town of Alabama Republican Committee held a meeting to endorse a person for the District 1 legislative seat recently vacated. It is the recommendation to the Genesee County Legislature by the Town of Alabama Republican Committee that Alabama resident Chad Klutzbach be appointed by the legislature to fulfill the remaining term as the District 1 legislative representative. Sincerely, Earl LaGrew, Town of Alabama Republican Chairman. And this is dated June 1st, 2020. Dear Chairperson Stein and members of the Genesee County Legislature, the Oakfield Republican Committee held a meeting on May 27th, 2020 for the purpose of recommending a candidate to fulfill the unexpired term of John Hilchey. It is by unanimous vote that the Oakfield Republican Committee recommends Chad Klutzbach for the appointment to County Legislator District Number 1. Respectfully, Daniel Mangus, Chairman, Oakfield Republican Committee.
Well, thank you for reading those, Pam. I appreciate that. Before I guess I'll have you guys, let's do the motions first and then we'll bring Chad on. Shelley would like to move that, and can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Andrew. Chad, are you on?
I am.
All right, this is Chad Klutzbach from, and I'm going to have him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself, because he's very shortly going to be voted to be moved to the full legislature for approval to fill the seat of John Hilchey. So go ahead, Chad, whenever you're ready. Give us a little background about yourself, as you're going to be our new legislator. So go ahead.
All right. Well, like she said, my name's Chad Klutzbach. Lifelong resident, Genesee County. Live in the Town of Alabama. Graduated from Oakfield, Alabama. Went off a civil engineering degree from Clarkson University. Came back. We have a family company here called Allegheny Services. I'm now the managing partner. We do kind of commercial construction site work, as well as a lot of agricultural drainage across the state. So like it was mentioned earlier, I do a lot lot of interaction on the agricultural front. Went off, did my MBA at Canisius College, and kind of during the same period, I've been member of the planning board, Town of Alabama. We've done our comprehensive plans. We're in the middle of a zoning update at this point. So I've really, I've done a lot of surveys, done a lot of chatting with people in the town. So I've got a pretty good status of what's going on in the town at the moment and kind of what the forward thoughts are and where people want to see it, where people want to see it going. Kind of excited to see what's coming. I know we're all facing unique challenges at this point. I'm looking forward to working with everybody. And with that, kind of another little passion of mine is I really like kind of working and encouraging like young entrepreneurs in the area. Just as it's super important to bring in new businesses into the county, I also think it's a better idea to foster and kind of encourage the students that we have and kind of younger people to build a business and mentor them in that front. So like I said, look forward to working with everybody. And
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate it. And thanks for coming to our meeting today and speaking. I think it's exciting to have someone with his commitment and his lifelong residency in the county. He went to school and came back, and now he's running a business, and it's going to be great to have some youthful leadership in the county. And I hope that this is a sign to others in our community to do the same thing and to begin to serve their communities in this capacity. So I'm so thankful that you're willing to serve the county this way, Chad. And I sure I speak for everyone when I say we really look forward to working with you. Does anyone have any questions for Chad or any comments?
Welcome aboard.
All right, let's formalize this. Did I already get I got a second, right? A motion and a second?
Yes.
Okay, so now we just need to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's carried. So when we meet for our regular legislative session next Wednesday, I believe we're making arrangements to have Chad sworn in so that he can take his seat on the legislature starting next Wednesday. All right. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Is there any other questions or comments to come before this committee today? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adjourn. Shelley, thank you. Gary, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Be well, be safe.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
thank you guys.
Almost welcome, Chad.
Oh, thanks, sir. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.